Profiles and Issues is a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. It is a show that profiles people and issues that affect the church in the modern world. Your program host is Father James Corda.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Profiles and Issues. I'm Father Jim Corda. Our issue today is on Islam. And joining me and helping me to profile the issue is Dr. Mir. Welcome to our show today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Could you explain where exactly the word Islam comes from? What's the origin of that?
The word Islam literally means two things. One is submission and one is peace. And the two meanings are related to each other. Submission means that human beings need to make submission to God. They need to surrender to God. And if they do, then God will fill their lives with peace, individually and collectively. So these two meanings are connected with each other.
I know that in Islam that there are what you call 5 pillars that are peculiar to not only Islam, but I think also to many other faiths as well. Could you share with us the 5 pillars of Islam and explain a little bit about each of those?
Yes. The first pillar of Islam is the declaration of faith. That is, you declare that you believe in God and in Muhammad as God's prophet. The second one is the prayer, that is to say the formal or ritual prayer, which is offered 5 times a day. And the third one is zakah, which has no adequate English equivalent, but which might be translated as mandatory giving, alms giving, poor due. These expressions are used for it. And this is 2.5% on your net annual savings, not income, but savings. If you've had $1,000 lying with you for 1 year, then you pay about $25 on it. This is for the poor and the needy. And this is their right. This is not that you're doing charity. It will be taken from you, according to Islamic law, if you don't pay it. It belongs to those poor people. It's their right. That is number 3. Fourth one is fasting. Muslims fast during the 9th month of the lunar calendar. And the name of the month is Ramadan, which should remind you of Ramada-in. And Muslims fast during that month from dawn to dusk, roughly. And they abstain from certain things, food, drink, and sex. They break the fast at sundown. So this is about 30 days, depending on the quirks of the moon. 29 sometimes, 30 sometimes. So this is, and it's meant to inculcate spiritual discipline. That's the main goal. It's not to starve people to death, but to teach them self-control. The next one and the last one is the pilgrimage to the Kaaba, which is the central sanctuary of Islam. It's in the town or city of Mecca, which is in present-day Saudi Arabia. Muslims believe that it was built by Abraham with the help of his young son Ishmael, and it's mandatory for adult Muslims who are able to undertake the journey physically and financially to the Kaaba to perform the pilgrimage at least once in their lifetime. Muslims, all Muslims, adult Muslims, male and female. So these are the 5 pillars of Islam then. Declaration of faith, prayer 5 times, and zakah, which is mandatory giving, 2.5%, and fasting, month of Ramadan, about 30 days, and then pilgrimage once a year, once a lifetime, that is.
If you could, Doctor, talk to us a little bit about Muhammad as the prophet and how central he is to Islam.
Yeah, Muhammad is the central figure in Islam, and Muslims believe that he was one of the prophets of God. Muslims believe in prophecy that God has sent or raised hundreds and thousands of prophets and sent them to different nations and countries and lands and peoples. And Muhammad then is the last prophet of God. And as a prophet, he received a divine message which he was supposed to share with his audience or with his nation, and that was the Arabs of the 7th century. Essentially, this message is the same as the message presented by other prophets before Muhammad. So there's no distinction made as far as the essentials of the message are concerned. In fact, Islamic scripture says that all the prophets, incidentally, in Islam, the first prophet is Adam. In Judaism, the first and the foremost prophet is Moses. In Islam, it starts with Adam and comes all the way down to Muhammad. And all these prophets form one group. They're brothers one unto another. And that's because they present the same message. And the essentials of the message are, number one, belief in one God. Number two, prophecy itself, which includes scriptures also in some cases, because some prophets brought scriptures with them. Moses is an example, Jesus is another, David, and then Muhammad. These four are actually mentioned in the Quran as those who brought scriptures. And the third one, very important, is the afterlife. That is, this is not the only life we live. We'll die, but then we'll be brought back to life one day, and then God will pronounce judgment upon us in light of the kind of life we lived. And we are supposed to live a moral life with the sense that we'll be held accountable for all our actions one day. And we'll be judged by God, but that God is the God of justice on the one hand, but more important, He is the God of mercy. So the attribute of mercifulness is the most important attribute of God in Islam.
Let's talk a little bit, Dr. Mir, about prayer within Islam. You had mentioned that Muslims pray 5 times a day. Mm-hmm. What's the significance of the number 5?
It could have been 3, as in Judaism, Orthodox Judaism. It could have been 7. You see, there's a principle in regard to acts of worship. We are not supposed to question why should we face in a certain direction, why should we utter or read certain prayers, formulas within the prayer, why stand up and then bow and then prostrate yourself on the ground. These are given by the Prophet under divine instruction, and we are simply supposed to follow them. There's a choice or discussion or consideration of several issues when it comes to what Muslims call the legal field transactions or dealings with other human beings. So there you have a choice. But in acts of worship, we do what the Prophet has told us to do under divine instruction, as I said. But some people have reflected on that, and they believe that these 5 occasions represent certain momentous changes that occur in the universe. So the sun rises. So just before that, you perform the first prayer. Likewise, for example, the 4th prayer of the day, the sun sets. So the universe, or the many phenomena within the universe, serve God in certain ways. So that the sun rises, and you rise with it. You don't worship the sun. So there's no worship of the sun itself. The sun worships God, and so you worship God too, along with the universe. There's certain alignment, so to speak. I'm borrowing a term from automobile alignment, but the idea here is that you go with the universe. The universe submits to God. It expresses its submission in the form of sunrise. This is an example only, one example only. Sun rises, and it's in the middle, and it's standing on duty, so to speak. So about midday, a little after midday, you perform the second prayer. Then the sun again starts to set. And late afternoon, you perform another prayer. And then just before going to bed, you perform the 5th prayer. But these are deliberations and reflections and ideas of Muslim scholars. This is not this is not something that you have to believe in. This is like theological reflections.
Tell us a little bit, we're coming down to the last few minutes of our first segment together, about the whole pillar of pilgrimage. is it practical? And before the taping, we talked about being practical. Is it practical for men and women who are Muslim to actually go to Mecca? How does that happen?
Yes, Muslims regard that as a very important pillar of Islam, and since usually people come from far off places, you go from Egypt and Pakistan and Malaysia, Indonesia, the US, other Western countries, and so on. It's not easy in terms of money involved and in terms of the preparation that you have to make to visit the Kaaba. So wealthy people, of course, can afford it rather easily, but people of lower middle classes and others, they usually save up all their life for many years, and then they wish to perform the pilgrimage and fulfill the obligation. About 3 million people currently perform this pilgrimage. They come from all parts of the world, all backgrounds, all cultures, all languages, all races. And this, I think, is probably the most spectacular manifestation of the idea of Muslim unity. And I think Malcolm X said something so succinctly that no other Muslim in history, as far as I'm aware, has been able to catch the spirit of the pilgrimage. And he said that when you go there and you see all these peoples from different colors, races, you see that Islam is color blind. That is to say, all human beings perform the same rituals and serve God together without any distinctions whatsoever. This is one thing which impressed him a great deal. So when he came back from pilgrimage, he was a transformed individual.
Is there a particular time of year that Muslims go to Mecca, or is it throughout the year?
Yes, see, after the month of Ramadan, about 2 months and 10 days after that, is when the pilgrimage or Hajj, as it is known, falls due. So we follow the lunar calendar for that, and it changes from year to year because the lunar calendar, as you know, is shorter than the solar calendar. And so in about 30 plus years, you go run through the gamut of the year. So you have performed the pilgrimage, that is to say the community as a whole, throughout the year.
And then we're down to the last few minutes of our first segment. Briefly explain fasting. You had mentioned it as one of the pillars. Briefly make one statement about fasting, and then we'll take a break and come back and continue.
Fasting, as I said, is meant to give you control of yourself. You might say baser self. You are supposed to be able to control your desires and urges. And basically, you are making a statement, namely, that I am willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of God if He commands me to, and this is my preparation. So it's spiritual purification more than physical starvation or something like that, that Islam intends. So you are supposed to be kinder to other people during fasting. You're supposed to perform some extra prayers if you can, give extra charity, and be nice to people. Muhammad, in fact, said once that if someone wants to pick a fight with you during the month of fasting, say, please, I'm fasting. That is to say, bickering, wrangling, fighting does not go with fasting. So you're supposed to be on your best behavior, but not only for that month. That's supposed to be a preparation for the rest of the year, and then another month, and so on.
We're going to continue our discussion in a moment. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Profiles and Issues. I'm talking with Dr. Mir on the issue of Islam. Dr. Mir, explain to us about the Sunnis and the Shiites and how significant that is within Islam.
Well, Sunnism and Shiism. This is a case where theology and politics are mixed. And that, I think, is typical of religious history, no matter what religion you are talking of. In Islam, Muhammad died in the year 632. And an important question that the Muslim community was then faced was who should succeed Muhammad? This was the issue of succession. Now, Muhammad was a prophet. So he was the last prophet. So the issue was not who would be the next prophet. That avenue was closed. The issue was Muhammad was also the political head of the community. So who should fill his shoes as the chief executive of the community? This was the issue. There were several views. And one of the views was held by a small number of people at that time that Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, Ali was his name, should succeed him. The Muslim community picked another person. His name was Abu Bakr. He was the most trusted companion of Muhammad during his life. So Muslim community elected Abu Bakr. Some people, as I said no, Ali should have been the one to succeed Muhammad. This problem did not flare up at that time, did not become a big issue, but it remained under the surface. The word Shia means party or group. Shia are so called because they are the party of Ali. That is to say, they believe that Ali should have succeeded Muhammad direct, not with the intervention of anybody else. So, historically speaking, Ali is the fourth individual to head the Muslim community politically after Muhammad. So he is called one of the caliphs, the fourth caliph. Historically speaking, the Shia hold he should have been the first one to succeed Muhammad. The Sunnites say the history of Islam unfolded the way it was supposed to. Abu Bakr was the right choice after Muhammad. So after Abu Bakr, another person. After him, another person. So three caliphs after Muhammad and then Ali. This is the order that Muslims, the Sunnite or Sunni Muslims accept. Now you might ask, what's the big deal? Muhammad dies, someone has to head the community, so you pick one person, if not him, then somebody else. The matter is not that simple. The complications arise when theology enters into this political matter. Shiites eventually developed the view that Ali should have succeeded Muhammad because he had been so nominated by the Prophet Muhammad under the instructions of God, and to that effect, to that end, the Shiites interpret certain verses of the Quran and certain events in the life of Muhammad when he was alive, and they say these verses and these sayings and these events indicate that Ali should have been the one to succeed Muhammad. In other words, they said that Ali was designated by Muhammad. So this boils down to designation by the Prophet versus election by the community. So they say, we don't believe in election. If God or the Prophet designates someone as Muhammad's successor, who are we to elect somebody else? So the community was at fault. This is their view. So they call Ali an imam. The word imam means leader. It has other meanings also, but basically it means leader. And they say, see the word Imam Khomeini, for example, he is not an imam in the same sense. Imam in this particular sense means one who has been specifically designated by the Prophet to succeed him. And Ali would be succeeded by his son. He had two sons, Hassan. So next Imam, Hassan, then his brother Hussein, then his Hassan, Hussein's son, his son, up to 12 Imams. And the 12th Imam disappeared in the year 874 when he was still a child. and he is alive according to the Shiites, and he is the perfect ruler who will arrive one day when God deems fit, and he will fill the earth with peace and justice. It's entirely up to God to decide when he will appear on the scene. But when he appears on the scene, Muslims are supposed to obey him and give their allegiance to him. So the Shiites await the return of the 12th Imam. However, this is the view of the so-called 12er Shiites. I say 12er because they believe in a series of 12 Imams. There are also 7er Shiites. There are also 5er Shiites. Believe in 7 Imams, believe in 5 Imams. But the 12ers are the largest sect of the Shiites, and they are the ones that are in Iran and in Iraq and other places. They are the largest group. And the Sunnites say that this is not right. And the important thing is that in Islam, Muslims regard prophets as infallible. Sunnites say that only prophets are infallible. The Shiites extend the notion of infallibility to their Imams also. Now, this has consequences because if, let's say, the 10th Imam says, this is the correct interpretation of this verse or that verse of the Quran, you cannot question that, even if historically there are no reports in existence that this is what Muhammad said and his companions heard that, passed it on, passed it on, passed it on. Even if there's a complete break between the Prophet and the 10th Imam, but the 10th Imam says something, you cannot question that Imam. Sunnites say it's convenient for you to make the Imams infallible because under that guise you can present and vindicate all sorts of views, interpretation of the Quran, sayings of Muhammad and so on. The Shiites say, no, this is the right belief to hold. So, issue of succession number 1, and election of somebody else than Ali, Abu Bakr namely, Ali being the 4th caliph, that's how the Sunnites accept him. Shiites say, the first 3 caliphs, their rule is illegitimate. Ali should have been the first one. And as I said, theologically speaking, the importance of the issue is that Ali is an Imam, as such infallible, and so are his 11 successors. And the 12th Imam is alive according to the Shiites, and the Sunnites do not accept that. It has momentous consequences in terms of interpretation of the religion.
Let's talk briefly, Doctor, about the Quran and its origin, its significance within Islam.
The Quran is the name given to the revelations that Muslims believe came to Muhammad from the year 610 when he announced that he was a prophet until the year 632, the year of his death. So some 20 plus years Muhammad is believed to have received revelations in small and large chunks, and they were then collected and given the name Quran. Quran means both recitation and reading. It's read from memory on the one hand, it's read from text on the other. It's about the size of the New Testament, and it's in Arabic. Incidentally, in Islam, only the Arabic Quran is regarded as the Quran. The translation is just that, translation. So Muslims do not read the Quran in English or some other language or liturgy, for example, when they're performing the prayer. It has to be the Arabic Quran. That is why in many Muslim countries, young kids within their families, or they go to the school, mosque school nearby, they try to learn the Arabic script in order to be able to read the Arabic of the Quran. And this happens, interestingly, in many non-Arab countries where the kid who has learned to read the Arabic script does not know what he is or she is reading. But this is an expression of the commitment of Muslims to their scripture. And you might know that the Quran is a book that is memorized by many Muslims from page 1 to page last. And once again, surprisingly, most of these people who have memorized the Quran are non-Arabs. If you ask them, what is it that you are reciting? they won't know. They would draw a blank. But there are institutions that teach systematically. Young kids and older ones too, of course. Anyone can do that, to memorize the Quran. So the Quran is the scripture of Muslims, and conceptually speaking, it's in the same line as the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament as some call it, or the New Testament, or the Psalms of David, and many other scriptures that were given to certain prophets in religious history, as found in the Bible and in the Quran. So it's a scripture. It affirms, the Quran affirms the previous scriptures that came from God. In principle, it does say that some changes were made to those scriptures, but in principle, all Muslims have to believe that God sent down other scriptures in the past also. As far as its content is concerned, it's basically the same as the content of the Bible, for example. So there's a statement, many statements about the articles of the faith. There's one God, there are prophets, there's the afterlife, there's some law, there's some discussion of ethical material, religious history. Some names of the prophets are mentioned, their teachings are presented. And again, as I said earlier, Muslims are supposed to live a moral life, just like Jews and Christians, according to their scriptures. And so the Quran then presents essentially the same type of teachings that the earlier or previous scriptures present.
Doctor, we have only 2 minutes left of our time together. Briefly share with us the significance of the Dome of the Rock, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque that are there as well.
Yeah, Muslims believe that at a certain time during his religious, during his prophecy, Muhammad was taken to the heavens. This, of course, is debated matter in Islam, whether Muhammad was taken to the heavens physically or was it a vision. But this is the belief. It occurs in chapter 17 of the Quran, which is called Isra, which means night travel. That is to say, Muhammad was taken to the heavens on a certain night, and Gabriel took him there, where Muhammad had certain experiences. He was shown different parts of the heavens, heaven, hell, and so on. So according to some Muslim philosophers who have different take on it, they say this represents the fact that human beings can rise all the way to the heavens. A philosophical sort of interpretation. So the place from where Muhammad ascended to the heavens is supposed to be the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And the Dome of the Rock is in that area also. Now, it is said in the Islamic tradition that Muhammad, when he got to Jerusalem, performed a prayer, and he led in that prayer other prophets, which is supposed to signify symbolically that he is the last and the greatest of the prophets.
Dr. Mir, we thank you very much for being with us and your wonderful insights into Islam.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you.
Profiles and Issues was a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. Your program host was Father James Corda.